We now have our blank application that says hello world. Um, you should have seen the previous video on how we created this. It's very simple. It's just a default project where we do nothing. We just run it in an emulator. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do a temperature converter in order to understand how components interact with each other within the screen, how controls interact with each other, and how the visuals, right? The view interacts with its controller and its model. So the first thing that we're going to do is, I know I'm going to convert temperatures. So I'm going to create a separate class, new Java class, called unit converter, that's fine. And it's going to have a few methods to convert from one thing to the other. Because I'm going to make a temperature converter, I'm going to have public static double, and I'm going to have method Celsius to Fahrenheit. I'm going to get a double value in Fahrenheit. And to convert from Celsius to Fahrenheit, okay, what you have to do is the degrees in Fahrenheit minus 32 times 5/9. That is just the formula. You can look it up. I'm also going to have a method static double Fahrenheit to Celsius. And I'm going to get the degrees in Celsius. And I'm going to return this time is going to be 32 plus the temperature in Celsius plus times 9/5. Basically, it's the inverse, right? So one can have this, right? So Celsius equals Fahrenheit minus 32 times 5/9, and then therefore Fahrenheit is 9/5 times C plus 32. But these are formulas you can find anywhere. The purpose of having this class has nothing visual whatsoever. It's a model. If you want to get the Celsius, here are the Celsius. If you want to get the if you want to get the double, I'm sorry, if you want to get the Fahrenheit degrees, you get the Fahrenheit degrees. It's got some logic in it. One can argue this could be part of a controller, but I really want to make it a special class that's tied to nothing visual, because if my visuals change, I don't want this to change. So this is just a regular Java class. I did static methods because I don't want to instantiate it. I want to call these methods directly for simplicity. All right, so that is that. I have a way to convert units that I have not hooked up to anything yet. Now, if I go to my layout activity test, here I'll see my little phone. I'm going to erase this hello world controller. I select it and then hit delete. Let me see if I can make this any bigger. There. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a text field here, and for that I go to plain text. Okay, I can also have a number, decimal. I'm just going to have this here. I'm just going to put it here. I could put it there, right there. Now you see that it uses a little space. I actually want it to go all the way across. But I don't want to drag this because this will set a specific length, and if the screen ever changes, this might look funny. So what I want to do with this control is I want to look at, you see where it says layout height? There's a layout width. I do not want it to wrap content. I want it to match the parent. The parent of this text field is whatever this white space is. We're going to look at what that is in later videos. But it's actually a layout, but I want it to match that layout in length. In height, though, I want it to wrap the content. I don't want it to match the parent and then have a huge text field, right? I want it to just match the height of the numbers. All right. The other thing that's interesting here is I'm going to add a hint for this. So where it says hint, I'm going to put enter temperature. Okay, And there's a hint. What happens with this is as soon as I tap in here, this enter temperature disappears and it allows me to enter the temperature. And then the other important field is this ID. Okay, I'm going to call it temperature edit text. That's going to be the ID. Now, what I want to do is to have like a little radio pair of radio buttons here that will say, you know, whether I want to convert to Celsius or to Fahrenheit. It'll mark that. So the first thing I'm going to do is to create a radio group. A radio group is a container where you can put sets of radio buttons, and it will allow only one to be clicked. So let me explain. Let's put some radio buttons in here. So let's put the first radio button here. Now, another way to change quickly the main properties is just to double click the control. So the text in there is going to say from Celsius to Fahrenheit. And the ID here is going to be to Fahrenheit radio button. Let's have it checked just for the heck of it. And then I'm going to create another radio button right underneath the previous one, right there. And it's going to say from Fahrenheit to Celsius. And I'm going to call it, the ID for this is going to be Celsius radio button, or to Celsius, right? To Celsius radio button. Done. Now they're in a group, so only one can be checked at runtime when I run this application. Now as you can see, this thing uses the whole space. I don't want it to use the whole space, this radio group. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to its properties and look at the layout height, and I'm not going to say match parent. What I'm going to say is wrap content. So basically be as high as your content is. That allows me to put more components under here. And the last component I'm going to use is going to be a button here that will say, double click on it, will say convert. And the ID is going to be convert button. Oops, little c. So the idea of this interface, if you can see it, it's very small here, but it'll be, I will enter the temperature, then I will check if this temperature is Celsius, then I'm going to check from Celsius to Fahrenheit. If this temperature is in Fahrenheit, I'm going to check from Fahrenheit to Celsius. Then I'll click convert, and this temperature will change to reflect its value in either Celsius or Fahrenheit, depending on what's checked. Okay. For that, I need to add an on-click listener to this convert button. So I'll select the convert button. I will look for the properties, to the on-click property. Here's the on-click, and what I want here is what I want to put here is the name of the method I'm going to call when that button is clicked. What I'm going to call is the convert method. Okay, convert. That's what I'm going to put this. That's what I'm going to use here. Okay, convert. And I am done with my layout. Now let's see how we can see how this is reflected in the XML file that forms. Here's my edit text, which is where I enter the temperature. You can see a few things here. For example, the input type is number decimal, so it does not allow letters. Then there's my radio group, and inside my radio group there's the two radio buttons, and then underneath it all there's the button, right? So that's my design. I'm done with it. Let's look at now my activity, basically my controller for this view. I'm going to my activity class, and here are a couple of things. I need to hook up. I need to tell my activity, my controller, that these controls that I see here, the text view, the radio buttons, they all must have a Java equivalent so that I'm able to use them, to refer to them. This is also like connecting. If you were to think of connecting, I want to connect this enter temperature to a Java control that I can change. I want to connect each radio button to a Java control that I can change. Okay? So let's look at how to do this. Well, let's create the objects that we have. We have one edit text. We have one edit text, and we're going to call it temperature, or temp for short. We also are interested in one radio button, right? One radio button, which is to Celsius. One radio button that is to Fahrenheit, right? Now, these are things that we're interested in checking or analyzing, okay? The button itself, when it's clicked, I'm not interested in its properties, on the text or any of that, right? The button, on the other hand, will need a method that when clicked will do something. That method for the button, if you remember, the method for the convert button is, where's the onClick here? OnClick, the method is convert. So we have to actually create that method in my activity. I will create it. It's public void convert. And now this, there's no way for you to know this, but the parameter that it receives is a view. Okay, it's an Android view. Let me import views because it's in red. Good. It's an Android view. So far, so good. When the button is clicked, what am I going to do? Well, here's the thing. The first thing I want to do is, you see how I have the placeholders for a text, a radio button, and another radio button. Well, let's hook them up to the XML components that I described. And this is the way you hook them up. Say, for example, you say, for example, temp, it's going to be an edit text. I'm casting here, so I'm going to return something and I'm going to cast it to an edit text. And then here's how you hook up elements from an XML. You say find view by ID, and then you put r.id dot, and then what was the name of our temperature text editor? Started with temperature, I think. There it is, temperature text edit text. That's what we call it. We're going to do the same thing with the 2 Celsius. 2 Celsius is going to be a radio button, and the radio button in the XML is called RID. It's called what is it? 2 Fahrenheit? No, 2 Celsius. Oh, I didn't call it anything? Give me 1 second here. What did I call this? I'm going to double click here. 2O capital T, that's why. Let's call it lowercase t. There you go. Alright, go back to my text activity. 2 Celsius radio button. Alright, so now I've connected the temperature, the 2 Celsius, and then of course I'm going to say 2 Fahrenheit. I'm going to connect it to, it's a radio button. I'm going to find it in the XML. It's going to be RID 2 Fahrenheit radio button. What I have done now is I've connected everything that was in the XML is now available to me as Java variables, and I can manipulate it. Okay? Now let's stop for a second and see what we're doing here. In my onCreate method in the activity, this is when everything is set up. The important thing to say here is this view, this class, right, will control the following XML file. Activity test under the directory layout. Again, you can see it here, layout activity test.xml. So this is going to be the view that I'm going to control with this activity, which can be thought of a controller. Now, within this content view, with this activity test, I'm going to look for something with ID temperature edit text. If you go into the XML and into the text of it, you will see that the edit text here, its ID is, this basically says create a new ID, temperature edit text. That's its ID. So what is this R, you ask? Well, this R is a variable. It's a Java class that updates. Every time you change an XML file, there's going to be an R for resource, an R dot, and whatever that resource is. Okay, created. So you can reference it in Java. And that does the connection. So now find view by ID returns a view, which is the parent of all objects that you can see in Android. Therefore, that's why you have to cast it down to whatever it is exactly that control. Okay, so now we have a hook to manipulate the controls that I have on the screen, and the method that the button calls when it's pressed, when it's clicked. So let's do this. All I need to do now is that if 2 Celsius is checked, for example, if the 2C is checked, okay, so this means somebody checked 2 Celsius. I'm going to convert to Celsius, right? That means that my degrees are in Fahrenheit. So I'm going to create a little temporary variable here, double value. And double value is going to contain the text that I enter as a temperature. Remember, I have to enter a text as a temperature, then choose what conversion I want to perform, and then hit the button. So my value is going to contain my temperature. And my temperature is in the text field that I hooked up to the variable temp. So it's going to be temp.get text, right? Now this returns a very special thing that then you have to convert to string. Okay, this get text does not return a string. It returns an editable object. But then you have to convert it to string. Now the thing is that this is a string and this is a double. So to convert from string to double, you can easily say new. You use the wrapper classes from Java, the double wrapper class, right? So you pass a string, which is whatever's in the text, you convert to double, and that's your value. Now, if the 2 Celsius is checked, what I'm going to say is value then will become unit converter Fahrenheit to Celsius value. Remember, we created this class at the beginning of the video where this will convert from Fahrenheit to Celsius, which is what I want because the 2 Celsius radio button is checked. Otherwise, I could check for whether the other one is checked, but for now I'm not going to do it. Value will be unit converter dot Celsius to Fahrenheit of value. And then in the end, I'm going to set this value back to the text field, back to the edit text, right? So I'm going to say temp, which was my edit text, remember? Set text, and this wants a string. So this is easy. I can say new double value. So I'm creating a value, an object with the value in there, and then I say to string. Okay. So I could easily do this. I can do it, you know, in several ways. I could actually parse that string with a double. There are several techniques to do this, but the main point is I get the text string into a double. I use my auxiliary. I use my hook to components to see which one's checked. I use my auxiliary class to perform any additional computations. Could be thought of my model, and then I set the text back. Okay, that is all I need to do. So then we're going to run this. Let's run this and see how it fares. It's going to ask me. I already have an instance of an emulator running, so this is going to ask me where I want to run it after it's built. So I'm going to run it in that emulator, and we'll see what the effect is in a second. So here it is. Enter temperature. I know that 32 Fahrenheit are 0 Celsius. So if it's 32, I'm going to convert from Fahrenheit to Celsius. You see how if I click here, that one unclicks? That's because they're in one radio group. Okay, I'm going to convert from Fahrenheit to Celsius. So 32 Fahrenheit to Celsius. Oops, I think I got it backwards. From Celsius to Fahrenheit. Oops, I got it backwards. that's easy to fix. Um, so the problem here is that my from Celsius to Fahrenheit, I call it to Fahrenheit radio. Maybe my formulas are just the other way around. In converting Fahrenheit to Celsius, yeah, because to Celsius is checked. So unit converter. Oh yeah, Celsius to Fahrenheit. This is the other way around. I got the formulas reversed. So I'm just gonna reverse them here. Easy enough. And here's the thing. Something useful about this is that Fahrenheit to Celsius. Yeah, so this is Fahrenheit, this is Celsius. I'm just going to do it properly. So what I'm doing here is if I have any changes, it's in the model class, so I don't care what the view looks like. So I'm just going to run it again, and this time it's going to run fine. So we're going to run it in this emulator. And now you will see that if I put in 32 Fahrenheit, right? So 32 Fahrenheit when converted to Celsius is 0, right? Now, I don't know, 30 Celsius, right? To Fahrenheit is around 90 or something, just close to 90. So yeah, 86 degrees, right? So this converter works. Now you know how to hook components, how some of the components work, and you can now start building a lot more interesting applications.